Black Forest Labs just released a massive improvement to Flux 1. It's a whopping 2% better than Flux 1 by their own... 2% better? Like, what the... Okay, guys, so Flux 1.1 was recently released. And I say released in the sense that you can access it. It's not open source, okay? It's closed source. But it seems like there's a lot of confusion around what Flux 1.1 is. What Flux 1.1 basically boils down to: Flux Pro, the proprietary version of Flux, that Flux Dev, the open source version of Flux, is distilled from. Flux 1.1 is an update to this proprietary model. It's not an update to the offline version that people are using. Also, the main advantage of Flux 1.1 was not meant to be a quality improvement, and Black Forest Labs never in their marketing actually says that this model is somehow significantly better than Flux 1 when it comes to image quality. They say it's better when it comes to speed. As far as speed, I think it's about 6 times better than the original Flux model. I say the original Flux model because they also updated the speed of Flux 1. So they have Flux 1 Legacy, and then they have Flux 1 Updated. So the speed of Flux 1 Updated is about twice as fast as the Legacy version. And then you have Flux 1.1, which is 6 times as fast as the Legacy version, or twice as fast as the new updated version of Flux Pro. You understand? All of these being proprietary models. However, with regards to quality, the actual quality, by the own benchmarks that Black Forest Lab have shown, the model is only about 2% better. I've seen people reacting, and I've seen a lot of posts of images online, and people saying that, oh my god, this model is so much better than the last one, and it's insane the amount of quality that we have available now, when in reality the model is exactly the same as a model that was already available. You see this a lot with new releases, where everyone's always like, this new release is so much better, even when it's exactly the same as the old thing. And it's hilarious that the people who release the model, who are incentivized as best they can to try to exaggerate the performance of their model, even they are saying that it's slightly better. The whole focus of this post was meant to just say that Flux 1.1 was a faster model, 6 times faster. This is just meant to be more efficient so that they could sell their API to partners. That's the value. The value is not meant to be for producing higher quality images. It's just meant to make the API more lucrative for people who are using the API. You understand? Anyway, the other problem that people had was since we know that Flux 1 Pro is the model that Flux Dev is based on, are we going to get a Flux 1.1 Dev? Are we going to get a distilled version of Flux 1.1? And the problem with this, doesn't make any sense. Like, if we don't know what they did with Flux 1.1 in order to make it 6 times faster. However, you could assume that there probably was some degree of distillation or something like that they did. If that's what they did, then they won't be able to take the distilled version. Like, if Flux 1.1 is a distilled version of Flux Pro, they can't distill the distillation and give us that model. You can't do that, okay? You just end up with a terrible model that is not going to function. You can't distill a distilled model. Let's say they didn't do that, and they somehow like made changes to improve the model in some way. It doesn't really matter, since Flux Dev, the offline version of Flux Dev, is already faster than Flux 1.1. Again, if you use the data on Artificial Analysis, which is the site that Black Forest Labs was debuting their model on, before Flux 1.1 was released, they were testing the model on this website where you go onto the site, they show you 2 images, and you simply vote for which one you think is a better image. On this website, you can see here a bunch of different models here. We have Flux 1.1 Pro, we have Flux 1 Pro, we have Flux Dev, and all of them are rated here. They have an ELO score. The ELO score is just like its rating in terms of how much it's beating the other models. The score of Flux Pro and Flux 1.1. Flux Pro is 1,129, and Flux 1.1 is 1,053. If you run the math on this, it's about 2% more. It's a 2% higher score. But the crazy thing is, I feel the reason why people got fooled is because of this image right here. If you look at this graph here, where they compare Flux to all these other models, you can see Flux 1.1, and oh my god, guys, look at SD3 medium. Oh my, I know SD3 is bad, okay? I know everyone knows SD3 is terrible. But Jesus Christ, look at how much worse it is. It's almost, what? But then you look closer at the graph and realize something very special, guys. See? They start the graph at 950. So they don't actually show a proper graph. And if you showed a proper graph, you'd see that the models are significantly closer together. That's why they show this manipulative graph. I swear, I believe this is bleeding in to why some of the reports that people are having. I mean, this video isn't about this website, but I'll just try to show you this pretty quickly here. So what you'll see here is this is how the site functions. It gives you two images, it gives you a prompt, and you have to rate which one is better. And then you vote here, and then after you vote, it adds the point to whichever model is better. So you can read the prompt here: colorful Mexican folk art, intricate symmetrical designs, and you would simply just pick which one you think is better. Let's say I think that this one is better. I click this, and it tells me that the two models were DALL-E 3 and Neptune Next, and the model I voted for was DALL-E. And then we have another prompt here again, which you have the same thing here: user-centric dashboard design with a fitness tracking app, clear data visualization. That would definitely be this model here, and that ends up being Blueberry 1. And just so you know, the model Flux 1.1 was being tested on this interface, but it wasn't named Flux 1.1. When it was being tested, it was called Blueberry. So the model I just voted for there was the Flux 1.1 model. So this is the interface. On this website here, we can see a lot of data, and it gives us indication as to how close these models actually are. You can see Flux Dev is actually much further away from these models, but Flux Pro and Flux 1.1 is not that far apart. But more importantly, if you look here, you'll see the speed. So this is Flux Pro, and then we have here Flux 1.1, and you can see here that this model at 4.5 seconds, it's about 3 times faster around there, or a little bit more than this one. Flux 1.1 is obviously a lot faster, but you can see the speed is the main thing they're marketing the model on, right? However, if you go and look at Flux Dev, you see that its median generation time is 3 seconds, meaning that this model is even faster than Flux 1.1. So when people say things like, oh, well, I hope they release a dev version of Flux 1.1, well, the main advantage of Flux 1.1 is speed, and dev is already faster. So it actually doesn't even make sense to release, right? I mean, there's a potentiality that maybe Flux 1.1 was trained more. That's something that they could have done. Maybe, I don't know. They have not publicized what they have done. But you could see why the open sourcing of Flux 1.1 doesn't really make any sense. At most, it probably already is distilled. If it's already distilled, then they can't open source it, since, well, you can't distill the distillation. Now, if it's like a wholly new model or something, like let's say that's what it is, then it still wouldn't make sense, because the actual quality is not even that much better. So what would we be getting? Like, what would we realistically getting here? Okay, it just doesn't seem to make sense. But I did go so far as to generate images with Flux 1.1 and Flux Dev. So what we have here is Flux 1.1 at the top, and then Flux Pro at the bottom, okay? And you can see here, and again, you could look at these images yourself. I think you could peep at the images and say like, okay, maybe this one is better or whatever. I'll show the images here. So you have this. These are the Flux 1.1 images. And then we have the Flux Pro images. So this is the original version. These images are on the same seed, and they're generated on Civit AI's image generator. You can look at those images and decide if you believe that one is better than the other. Again, guys, be wary that there might be a placebo effect. You might be looking to see something. Okay, just keep that in mind. All right. For me personally, I don't believe that there's a clear, obvious difference between these images, right? Just for the sake of completeness, I did test again with this same prompt, but on a different seed. And these ones are the Flux Pro images, so the original model. And these are the Flux 1.1 images. Again, those are on the same prompt with the same seed, okay? As far as I'm concerned, guys, I don't believe that there is a massive, very obvious difference. Flux 1.1 is so much better. It's kind of hilarious to see a lot of the posts talking about how there's such a noticeable difference between Flux 1.1 and Flux Pro, and it's like, it's so much better. Oh my god, it's the future. It's hilarious to see, and makes you really wonder if it is that people can just pretend to see an improvement. How many improvements actually do happen? Because maybe sometimes companies just lie. Why wouldn't they, right? If you're going to see an improvement when it isn't even there. So I feel I just wanted to make this video about Flux 1.1 because it was a big release. A lot of attention was placed on this, and a lot of people were enthralled by this, and they expected that it was going to be this massive thing, and then they were disappointed when they saw that it wasn't released open source. Even though, as I said, there's nothing to open source, guys. It doesn't make any sense to open source this. I think the method that Black Forest Labs has of having a proprietary model, then they distill down the model that they give to the people, is actually a very effective way. Also, at the same time, the thing I'm mostly excited for was Black Forest Labs' promise to release a text-to-video model, and really, That's the model I think people should be focusing on. Whether or not Black Forest Lab is going to be open sourcing that, or if that's going to be a proprietary model. But if it follows this formula of they release the big model, they have the big model behind an API, but then they release a distillation, then that would be good. So I would think that we could get up in arms if the video model comes out that they promised. If they do that, and then they don't ultimately release that model, then we could be up in arms, right? But there's nothing really here, guys. There's nothing to be mad about. There's nothing to be sad about. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching the video. Subscribe if you like the video. And yeah.